Hi everyone. Hey girl. So hopefully my setup is alright. Trying to make do in the garage tonight so that way we have enough room to kind of put everything. So be patient. Okay, so we'll get started in just a couple minutes. I'm Keisha. This is my first tutorial, so be patient. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll make sure if I don't get them in the video, I'll get them afterwards. After the video ends, I'm going to put an entire list of all the items that I've used and tools, and then as well as links to where you can get them. I'm also going to upload a receipt from Lowe's so that you can go there and get them to price match for you on the rotisseries. I was able to get 6 the other day for $7, thanks to you ladies. So I have gone ahead and done a couple things ahead of time, but did leave at least one of those items so that we can kind of do it together. I know there's a lot of videos online that kind of tell you how to make a cup tisserie, but it doesn't really show you start to finish. So if you're like me, you have to do it on your own. I like to see kind of how to do it. I'm just brave enough to try things on my own. So what I will do is I'll start and show you guys the items that I have that I'm going to use to make it, and then we'll go from there. Alright, you're very welcome, Stacy. Alright, so basically the first thing that I have here is I have just a 1/2 inch plywood. Now you can get Lowe's or Home Depot to kind of cut it for you in size. I was able to go ahead and buy a large piece and cut it myself with the tools that I had. So now for each motor that you're going to place on here, you will want to do 9 inches for each one. Now I have the 4 Turner here. Now with this one I had already built, and then everyone wanted a tutorial, so I decided I would go ahead and do a 2 cup, so at least I could show you guys how I did this. So obviously you'll just want to take the measurements and times that by 2 from the ones that we're doing tonight. I do want to give a shout out because this, obviously I didn't create this. Do want to give a shout out to Heather and Dan at Featherbird Designs, because the single cup tutorial was what I used to inspire me for this. As well as Dale and Twyla Davis, who have been an enormous help for me answering questions and so forth, because of course I'm new. So shout out to them, as well as all of you ladies, because this group's amazing. You answer all the questions in just such a positive group. So I want to thank you all for that. I do want to say, don't judge, because all the crafting ladies will eat you alive. And yes, I know my eyebrows aren't the same. They're sisters, not twins. So we'll go ahead and start with the items that we're going to be using today. So I do have the male cup links. It's 3/4 inch. This is going to be for our football poles, and I use 3/4 inch or 3/4 inch PVC. So I have a 3/4 inch male coupling. And then I have a 3/4 inch female coupling. Okay. So this is what we're going to use to attach the PVCs to the rods. Of course, we have PVC glue. You don't have to use these. I like to use these, the countersink set, so that I can pre-drill the holes to avoid any ripping in the wood. A 3/8 inch drill bit, and I'll show you why we're using that later. I have 1 1/4 inch wood screws, 2 inch screws. Of course, I have some wood clamps, my measuring tapes, a level, very important in the cup world. I know you know why. A X-Acto knife, a silver Sharpie. Obviously, we have our patisserie. We have a 1 inch wooden dowel that we're going to cut down into 3/4 inch little pieces here. We have our 3/4 inch PVC pipe. We have our footballs from the Dollar Tree. We have the small for obviously the 20-ounce cups. And then we have a large one for the 30-ounce cups. I have some cutters here that I use for the PVC, which you can use anything to cut those. That's optional, of course. Gorilla Glue. I'm sure you guys already have that. So, now that we've kind of gone through this list, we'll kind of get started. So again, bear with me. It's the first time I've ever done this, so I want to make sure that I go through this as detailed as possible so that you guys can go back and reference this and hopefully make your turner and it works as well as mine does. All right. So basically what I want to do is I started, as I was saying, for each motor that we use, we're going to do 9 inches apart. So you guys can't read that, but this is 18 inches wide. And then after kind of determining the length of the poles that I was going to use, I ended up with 20 inches. So 20 inches by 18 inches for a 2-cup turner. So if you're going to do 4, you want to make that 36 by 20. So you can actually get Lowe's or Home Depot to cut that for you. Okay. So the first thing that I did, let me take this off, was I decided that I was going to make the base 1.5 inches in from the top. Okay. So what I did at that point was I took my 2x4, which of course we had, cut to the same length, so 18. I placed it 1 1/4 inches in, and then I'm going to use my wood clamps, or if you have another person, which is sometimes even better, you can have them hold that for you. So we'll go ahead and clamp this in, just one on each side. Get that tight so it kind of holds in place for you. And then I put one in the middle, just kind of as an extra stabilization. Okay, so as you can see, it's kind of holding on there. So what I did is then I flipped over to the back, and I use the lines from here. I'm sorry, let me get that down there. From here, so that I could make kind of a template on where my wood was on the other side. And at that point, that is when I took the drill and I used, I know this is backwards, the Ryobi countersink set. So basically what this does is this pre-drills the hole in the wood so that you're not cracking your wood when you're putting these screws in. So obviously it's going to last you a lot longer, as well as it, I don't know if you guys can see that, creates this little divot, or what they call a countersink. So that way when I put the screws in, and we put this on the counter, it's not scratching your counter because the screws, excuse me, are kind of inside the wood. So they're not poking out to where they're going to scratch, you know, the surface that you're putting this on. So I like to use those. Again, that's optional, but it's also going to help you when you're trying to make sure that this is level. Because if your screws are kind of poking out, then, you know, that's going to give it a little bit of height on this back side. So I try to use those. And that's when the 2-inch screws are going to come into place. So I'm going to go ahead and, excuse the noise, this is probably loud. I just wanted to make sure that I do things so that, excuse me, that you guys can, you know, visualize it and see it how it's done. That was something in a lot of the tutorials that I was personally missing. So at that point, this is when I want to take the 2-inch screws. Again, I'm going to put some links in for you guys to go on if you don't have them, to where you can get those. Let me load up. And then I've already pre-drilled these just to kind of eliminate as much time as possible for you while still showing you. So I'm just going to screw these two in real quick, just enough to support it, and then we will start with the mounting the rotisserie itself. So let's get this to where you can see. So I don't know if I can get that to where you guys can see it. Let's see. I just want to make sure that you see how that's kind of inside there so that it's not, you know, sticking out, and it's the board will be flush with whatever surface that you put it on. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 more real quick, and then we will start with mounting the motor. And I'm sure you guys probably have husbands who are cringing right now because I'm sure I'm probably not doing this right. I'm no woodworker by any means. But hey, it works. And when your husband says, I'll do it later, you can go out and do it and borrow his tools. Not to mention, it gives you an excuse to go to Home Depot or Harbor Freight. Which, you know, I'm sure you ladies love. Excuse me. Just do one more. Now I forgot to mention how far I did these. There really wasn't any set reason to the distance. I just came in a little bit from the side and basically, you know, 9 inches and then 2 in the middle between that. Just kind of distance them out because I want to make sure that we have a secure base. Because once the rotisserie starts spinning for a while, of course, as you know, it can sometimes wiggle the wood and it starts to loosen up and shake. So we want to make sure that this is as stable as possible. Now, of course, you can also use some wood glue here as well. But with, you know, such a small base and the amount of screws that we're using, I didn't feel that that was necessary. But that's completely optional. So now that we have that in, now of course you would want to use all the screws, but for video purposes, we're going to go ahead and start with the motor portion. Let me make sure you guys, I'm not even looking to see if you have questions. I'm sorry again. Okay. Just want to make sure you guys are with me because I think my comments might be freezing up. So, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so basically, obviously, as you know, doing cups, we want to make sure, you know, that our rods and cups are as stable and level as possible. So it's very important with the next step that we're about to do that we kind of double check those things. So it's one of those things like, what is it, measure 3 times or twice and cut once. So same situation. So if you do need to make adjustments because each piece of wood is different, they're not always going to be straight or level. So one measurement may not work for all. So we're going to start with the measurements, but of course if we need to make any adjustments with using the level, of course, which is your best friend in the cup world. So with using the level, we can make any adjustments that we need to, which is why I'm using wood screws versus using nuts and bolts that come with the rotisserie. So based on the 4 turner that I've already made, I'm going to kind of use those same measurements for this. We're going to do 3.5 inches in on the inside. Okay, both sides, 3.5 in, 3.5 in, because remember this is a 2-cup turner. And then 1 1/8 inches from the base up, and I just did that on both sides and then drew the line straight across. You know, with a ruler, or obviously you want to make sure we're square. Make sure that it's something straight that you can use to draw that line straight across, just kind of as a reference point. Now of course I wrote all over this just for video. So 1 1/8. Let's see if I can get that to focus. I don't know. 1 1/8. And then on 3.5 inches in, 1 1/8 from the bottom, which is where we're going to place this piece. Okay, this is going to be our support piece from the front. So basically we're going to come 3.5 inches in, which is right there, and 1 1/8 up. Okay, and again, we may need to make some adjustments depending on how the level. Now on this back side, because the main piece is wider than the other one, it's not going to be the 3.5 inches. It actually comes out to be 3 inches in, okay? And it is 2 inches up from the bottom. So 2 inches up from the bottom and 3 inches in. Now I have gone ahead again to try and speed this up while still showing you, and took this, I held it on here like this with those measurements that we just used. I had my 14-year-old son out here. Of course, he disappeared when work started. So, so then I took my pencil and I just basically went in. Actually, it's this way. I am so sorry. Went in and kind of just colored in those areas just to kind of give me a reference point. So as you can see, I've got these areas kind of colored in right here. So reference points, which is then going to give me the space to drill in those holes. Now, that comes back to this drill bit that I used earlier. Now, we're not going to want to go deep enough to use the countersink part, but we'll want to use this bit. Now, that bit is 1/8 drill bit. Okay, so 1/8 drill bit. And then we want to pre-drill in those marked in areas. So again, so that we're not splitting the wood, especially with it being so close to the edge here. This wood does have a tendency to split. So you want to make sure that you pre-drill those holes before you put in your screws. So now the screws that I used were the 1 1/4. Now these aren't the screws that I am going to put up in the link for you guys, because this is made by Craig. So the, I guess, head that you would have to use is actually square. So the ones that I'm putting in the link are the same size, but they just have a Phillips head on the end. So they'll be just kind of standard, so you don't have to get any extra tools or anything to use. So now I took the 1 1/4 inch screws, and I took the rotisserie base, okay, the tall part outside, placed it back onto our area here. Now, of course, now we already have our holes, so I'm just going to go ahead and attach that. I am attaching at all 4 here and 1 each down here. Now, since there's an open area right here to use, it's easy to put those screws in here. Now these 2 spots down here, which of course I wanted to screw in just kind of as that extra support for that motor, you can't fit that screw in those spots. So what you have to do is start off with those 2 screws, and you'll want to place it, let me see if I can show you, place it in first like this. Well, not like that. Like this. Let's see. Okay. So you're going to place those 2 in first. Place it into your pre-drilled hole. And then you can actually drill those in. And then once you have those in, then you can drill your top 2 pieces. Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly drill that in. I'm going to try to see if I can make this to where you can see it while I'm doing it. I know this is not the most glorious, but then again, I wanted to make sure that I did a tutorial so that everyone, you know, can do it and see every little step to it. So this is not for the person who's made multiple and just looking for kind of a quick tutorial. Obviously that's the furthest thing, but I just wanted to make sure that I kind of went through every step, provided links for every item that was used and so forth, for someone like me, because that was kind of what I was looking for. So let me get these drilled in, and then we will go over the next. Let's see, the footballs. Those footballs, Twyla and Wendy, were from the Dollar Tree. Now, you can go in, they're in the toy section. They're $1 a piece, both the large and the small ones. Or you can actually order them online, but with the large ones you have to order 6. And with the smaller ones you have to order them by case for 36. So $36. But if you have any, you know, friends that do cups, you know, that's not a bad deal to go ahead and get the case. But if not, you can walk into any Dollar Tree and they'll have them, tons of them, you know, there in the Dollar Tree. So let me get this in. Again, I apologize for any noise. I just wanted to not have everything pre-done, you know, so that you can get the full effect of what you have to do. So I'm trying to get this where you can see it. So as you can see, I was able to get my drill in there to those two spots that, of course it's not going to cooperate when I say that, to those two spots. So now I'm going to do the top screws. Now it's very important that you make sure that you keep this lined up with the lines to try and avoid any additional adjustments regarding it being level. Again, I apologize. I know this is not the most proper tutorial ever. Okay, see that kind of moved a little bit on me, so I'll just loosen it up. There we go. And again, I'm going to kind of fast forward just for the tutorial purposes. So once you have your 6 screws put in, then you're going to want to flip to the front side. Okay. And that is where this piece comes in. Okay. Which is going to be 3 inches in. I don't know if you guys can see this little mark right here. So it's going to be here. Now before I put this piece on, what I want to do is I want to take the motor. Now of course this is the charbroil, the infamous charbroil, which I'm going to put a receipt in for Lowe's as well as a link with the item number and everything, so you can go in and get them to price match for $7. I had 0 issues. I was kind of blown away that it was that easy. I'm sure it's not always that easy, but I was lucky. So the on-off switch is going to be facing upwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this on. Okay, and we're doing that so you can see how level this front piece is, just to make sure that you're not going to have any issues, because again, the least amount of times that you have to put any screw holes, obviously the better. But of course you can make adjustments, so that's the good thing. Now with these rods, I was kind of dumbfounded. I wasn't sure what I needed to do to cut them in half, but after a little bit of research I found that this little ditty, I think it was $3.95. Again, I'll place that into the link. A couple minutes. I literally cut this right in half, right in the middle. So I think it was what, 26.5 is the length. So 13.25. So I cut those right in half, right in the middle. It's actually pretty easy. I was kind of surprised. So the only other items in the rotisserie pack that you're going to use, at least in this version, are going to be the 2 slips. Let's get those out. These. So you got 2 of these. So something I didn't know until I watched Feather Bear Designs video. Let's pull this here. Was probably would have fixed some of my issues, was that thinner piece going right into the motor. So once that was there, let's put it on here. Let's see. Once that piece is in, it kind of stabilizes the motor, so it kind of avoids or helps to eliminate some of the kind of jumping and slipping and so forth. So I want to make sure that we take the factory side of the rod. Of course, that's the part we want to stick inside of the motor. We don't want to use the other side. So I'm going to stick that in as far as it'll go into the motor. Okay. And then we'll want to make sure that this little coupling ring, slip, whatever it's called, is as far down as it can go, and then tighten that, okay? Of course, we'll tighten that later a little more with pliers. But for now, we just want to make sure that it's tight enough that it's not going to move that rod. And then we're going to take the other one, and we're actually going to place it fat side down. So the two fat ends are going to be touching each other. We want to make sure that's as far down as it'll go, and then tight as well. Okay, so it's as tight as it'll go in the motor. Okay, now we're going to slide it back on, and we'll want to make sure that it's, you know, pushed down. Now, this little piece, if it's kind of hard to get in, you want to make sure kind of bend it just the slightest little bit, just so that it gives it kind of movement. And then once it's as far down as it can go, that's when we're going to start working on this piece, because we want to make sure that it's level. So what we're going to do is we're going to place this in. We're going to kind of use the lines that we had already kind of drawn on there. And then we want to start working with our level. And then once you see your little bubble, I want to make sure that motor stays down. I moved it. Once we see this bubble is in the center and that we're level, that's when you want to take your pencil, and we're just going to kind of color in those little openings. Okay. And then what I also like to do is just kind of trace the outside of this. So that way we know that that's where our piece is. It's level with the bottom. It actually ended up working out exactly as we had our line. Now, it's not always going to be that way, so you always want to double check. You know, to make sure, because each piece of wood's different, just like we are. So, and even sometimes after time, you want to make sure, you know, to go back and kind of check your rods to make sure that, you know, that they're staying level. The slightest little movement sometimes can maybe move this down on the screw or so forth. Okay. So basically, I'm going to kind of spare you guys the screwing in. So once you have your spot, you've outlined it, you know, okay, that's level, that's where it goes. You're just going to put 4 of those 1 1/4 screws in. Again, cool thing, if you need to make adjustments, just unscrew it, make your adjustments, and screw it back in. And sometimes, depending on where your screw is, you might not even have to unscrew it all the way. You can just loosen it up, move it around a little bit, hold it, screw it in. Now, a little trick that Dan from Feather Bear showed regarding keeping this motor kind of held tight to where it's not jumping up, moving, was to basically screw your motor onto your base. Now, pros and cons to that. Obviously, a pro is you don't have to worry about zip ties. You don't have to worry about the motor lifting or jumping or kind of moving around. Now, for me, the only con is the only way to move your motor is if you're moving the entire pole. You can't just lift your motor up. You would have to unscrew that. But I figure, you know, I shouldn't need to lift it up too much if it's working properly. So basically what you do is once you get your motor on, let's see if I can get this close for you guys. Once you get the motor on, of course that pulls, sorry. I did it backwards. So once you get it on here, what you're going to want to do is I like to use this silver Sharpie because it shows up, is to go in these holes and just make a mark. So when you take it out, there it is. Now, of course, you can see my boo-boos. So it's actually the top ones, but I might be wrong. It's the bottom ones. So basically at that point, what you're going to want to do is take your drill bit, which you can use the same one. Now, of course, they have ones for metal and wood. I try to go with the universal options so that I could do it. And you're literally going to drill into that spot. Now, I was scared to death to drill in there. I was afraid I was going to go in and mess the motor up. But as you can see, it's just like a front plate. There's a big gap in the middle there before you even get into the motor part. So when you're drilling in, once it pops through that front spot, you're going to feel it immediately, and you just let your hand off the drill. So it goes right in. And I just use the same drill. And I didn't purchase the screws to use for that. I actually had them around. But they're just the tiniest. Let's see where my measuring tape is. They are a 1/2 inch. So I'll have those in the links as well. You only need 2 per motor, so 4 of them. Just the smallest little 1/2 inch screws. And then I use just a little washer. Now, if you don't have a short screw, you can use a longer one, and you can just place, you know, a nut in between here and that front plate to kind of give it space so that the back of the screw isn't going through that second level. You know, again, this is completely an optional part of the tutorial. But it is kind of a more permanent option to, you know, holding this motor in and keeping it solid and steady without having to, you know, make any additional adjustments. Now, on to the part that I know everyone has been asking about. And this is definitely thanks to Twyla and Dave. I'm Dave. Yeah, Dale. Goodness. Is how do you get the PVC to stay on these small little rods? So, of course, I beat my head against the wall, and Dale was gracious enough to answer my questions. And that is where this wooden dowel, this is actually a 1 inch, that's where this came into place. So basically, I took this wooden dowel, and here is the female PVC coupling, which is going to be your base for how you're going to attach your PVC in your football onto the rods, with just screwing them on, or and then taking them off if you want to have them on a drying rack. So now this fits almost perfectly, not quite snug, of course. It moves around. Let me make sure that you can see that. So it moves around, but that is where your wonderful Gorilla Glue, which I use for all kinds of stuff, is going to come into place, because once it starts to dry, it foams up. So it literally enlarges, so it's going to kind of fill up that space. Now, again, for the video, I did kind of go ahead and pre-do this. I cut the dowel it ended up being 3/4 of an inch exactly as far as being flush with this, okay? So 3/4 of an inch. I went ahead and made my marks, and I cut it. You can cut it, I cut it with my miter saw, but you can cut it with really anything. But you just want to make sure that it's straight. Then I took my 3/8 inch drill bit and drilled right through, let me make sure you can see that, through the center of this, okay? It doesn't look that way by this one, but now I'm sure there's probably a more efficient way and a more accurate way, like if your husband has a drill press, use that, because it's kind of hard to make sure that it's in center. So if he has a drill press, or if your boyfriend or dad or whoever, use that. It's a better option. But what I ended up having to do was to use one of my wood clamps, and I just kind of clamped it in so I could hold on to it, held it in place, used my drill bit, drilled right through the center. Now, it's important to make sure that's in the center, because if not, when your rod starts to spin, you know, it could create it to kind of wobble a little bit. So you want to make sure it's as center as possible. Okay. Or am I making cups too? I'm trying to make cups. I think I am on, I don't know, maybe 20. Still fairly new, lots and lots to learn. But luckily I have you guys to help, so it's been fun. Now if I could stop wishing that I was making cups while I was at work, we'll be okay. So at that point, once we've made our hole, again, that's not center, but you want to make sure it's center. We are going to take our rod and we want to stick it in. Of course, this was not the end I want to use. I want to use the pretty manufactured end. And you're going to stick it in there. And I don't have a piece of board, but I basically took a piece of, just a scrap piece of wood on the top, and then a hammer, and I hammered this down in there, okay? Once it kind of gets in there, you know, then you can kind of just hammer it the way up. You want to maybe tape off or mark off with that silver marker, works perfect, where you want this wood to start. Now you want the wood to end up being right in front of where that slit is, okay? Now at that point, you are going to want to put your Gorilla Glue all around here, okay? And then you're going to slide this, you know, on your rod, onto that. So now this piece is going to be on your rod. So you're going to want to let it sit, I would say at least an hour or so. The longer the better. You know, so that Gorilla Glue has time to set. I did have a couple pieces of those dowels crack when I was, you know, banging the rod in. Really isn't that big of a deal, I don't believe. Once the Gorilla Glue's in there, it's going to fill up any space that it can. So just make sure that that Gorilla Glue's in there. And then it is going to... Dawson, will you go get that piece like this that has the Gorilla Glue, please? Thank you. Sorry. So once that Gorilla Glue dries, oh, it's right there. It's going to look like this. It's magic. So as you can see, it's foamed up. So it literally fills in all the space. So that's what it's going to look like. Now, of course, at this point, it'll be on your rod. So now you have your female coupling with the ridges on your rod. So you can take your rod, place it in. Now onto your footballs and your PVCs. Okay. The measurement, of course, is up to you as far as the length. But I have mine at 10 inches. So I use this cutter. Again, you can cut your PVC with whatever. I have this marked for 10 inches. So I'm just going to line that up. Clamp it. There you go. So, now at this point you don't have to, but I definitely recommend using your PVC primer and cement, just to kind of make this more permanent. So you'll place it around here and on here, stick it in. So now you have your male. This is going to be on your rod. It's going to screw right on. Very easy on and off. Just, as you ladies know, just don't get epoxy on it. Done it? Okay. So now, our dollar footballs from the Dollar Tree. Oh, video's frozen. Hopefully that fixes, or hopefully you guys can come back and watch this. But I'm going to continue just in case, so that you guys can come back and watch this video. I'm assuming that's how it works. So what I do is I basically take my PVC and I'm going to make sure it's as center as possible on this football top, okay? So I'm gonna, let me move some of this stuff out of the way. I swear it's a hot mess around here. My craft room currently, during renovation, looks like I belong on an episode of Hoarders. But on another note, so I'm gonna basically take this and I'm gonna put it right on the top of my football. And then I took my silver marker, which I love, and I simply just drew around the PVC as close as I could on both sides. Okay. So at that point, I am going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm simply going to cut just a straight across that line. Okay. So you want to make this kind of as flat as possible. Of course, I'm not doing that great of a job tonight, but you get the point. So at that point, I'm going to take my PVC onto the circle and I'm going to hold it in. Let me make sure I move myself so you can see. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm literally just going to go around that PVC straight down. Try to cut it as deep as you possibly can. And there is a tutorial that showed me how to do this, and it was so long ago. I think it was actually before I started. That is 3/4 of an inch PVC is what I'm using. But you can use any size you want, but of course you're going to need to make adjustments from the other pieces that we talked about, the couplings and so forth, as well as the dowel. But I'm going to take this. The young lady did the video, and she did exactly like this. I can't remember her name for the life of me, and I apologize to the young lady who did that video, because she deserves credit. So once you've kind of cut that straight down circle, you'll basically just reach in, and as you can see, it kind of, you know, just kind of starts to rip on its own. So you just kind of move it a little bit with your fingers and then just pull out that top chunk. Okay, now you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. And I'm just going to kind of do that a little quickly, again, for video purposes. Besides, I bought a whole case of footballs. So, everybody got footballs for Christmas. The neighbors got footballs for Christmas. You know. Every time I mess one up, I get a new one, which is like Christmas anytime I get anything new. I know you ladies understand that. So, basically, once you get those two larger pieces from each end out, if I can get it out, at that point, what I'll do is I'll take my X-Acto knife and just kind of go up and down, but you want to make sure you go straight down. But it should be pretty easy as long as your X-Acto knife is slightly sharp. Go up or down, and eventually it's going to come through. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so once you kind of get to that point, you just want to stick your kind of fingers in and kind of spread it out. Don't want to spread it out too much because then that's going to really soften the football. And you want to make sure that it stays firm in your cup. So you just kind of want to spread it out a little bit. And then you can pull out some of that middle as well. You don't have to pull out too much. But you want to make sure you're able to get your PVC in. Okay. And sometimes you have to cut a little bit more. No big deal. Again, you know, it's $1. And practice makes perfect. So once you kind of get some of the middle of that football out and get it separated, again, back to my favorite, fixes everything but a hangover. You're just going to want to put some Gorilla Glue on your PVC. Now, not too much, because when you go to push it in, it's going to just come out and be a complete nasty mess. So then you'll want to stick your football in and then ever so gently kind of twist it on. But you want to make sure you're continuing with every twist that it looks like it's straight. Because again, if it's not straight, you know, you did everything for nothing. So sometimes when you're doing it, it pulls out the piece you've been trying to get for 10 minutes. So, once you get to the end, okay, I have seen where people have used electrical tape here on top and bottom. Totally can do that. I do have one, actually, speak of the devil, there he is, that has that, and it works. Or you can do like I do with most of mine. And I will go ahead and take this pole and slide out just a little more. And I will pinch it to where you kind of have like a little gap there. And I will take my Gorilla Glue and I'll kind of shove it in there. And try to get the Gorilla Glue around inside as much as I can. And then pull your football back up. If you see any open spots, feel free to put Gorilla Glue, because it's just going to kind of harden into kind of a harder foam. And you can always don't cut your finger off. I'm surprised I haven't yet. I've got quite a few cuts. And then you can just kind of pretty it up if you care. But if you're like me, nobody ever comes over. So, you know, it doesn't matter. But you can kind of cut any excess off. Now you want to do the same thing down here. Nothing is going to move that once that's on there. Real quickly, speaking of cutting fingers off, what's up with all the ladies in the pretty gorgeous nails when they're showing their cups? How in the heck do they keep their nails like that? I mean, I'm lucky if I can go to work without like stains or glue, Gorilla Glue to be exact, on my fingers that has actually been stained. And they're showing cups with epoxy and glitter, and their nails are perfectly done. I swear they're magicians. Don't trust them. I'm just kidding. So now, of course, this is the larger football. This is the football, I'll have the link in there. Two-tone, I think is what it's called, the two-tone. This is going to be for the 30 ounce. This is going to be for a 20 ounce. Okay. The same poles, same Gorilla Glue, 3/4 inch PVC, 3/4 inch male coupling. One guess why it's male. And then you have your lovely 3/4 inch female coupling that's got the ridges here. That's got our wonderful wood. Let me show you the one that has the, I don't know if that's going to focus, Gorilla Glue. But of course this is going to be on your rod. So this will be your final product. So basically, let me set that down. I want to make sure. There you go. So you can use this. I have a PVC square that has the male ends. There's an elbow and then the male ends. So when I'm wanting to use it as a drying rack, I can screw them right into it, screw them right off, take it when I need to put my 5th coat of epoxy on, I can screw it back on. It literally slides right on your pole, screws right in, and works like a charm. Now, again, just as a reminder, I know this has been probably torturous and extremely long for you guys, but again, I wanted to make this for people like me who kind of needs a little extra help. Your level. I have a little plastic one that I keep inside. Because, you know, with the rotisserie moving, things move. I like to kind of go back in, you know, just double check. Of course, I think where it's sitting is not level because I just did these, but, you know, you want to stick that on there and make sure that it's level. Again, I'm going to follow this video up with links to all the items, a description of all the items that I use. Some are optional, which I'll let you know there. Prices that are listed on there for each one of the items. Copy of the receipt. Now I did see some of the ladies talking about the Lowe's not price matching. If you have any other Lowe's in your area, what I did do is I went on to Lowe's.com to, I guess it was their price match chat, and I was chatting with someone there who was telling me that I needed to provide them with a link to whatever store that was offering it, and I explained it's not a link, it's receipts. But I went in armed. I had, thanks to this page actually, I had found recent receipts from Lowe's, multiple recent receipts from Kmart, recent receipts from Walmart, because I do hear sometimes they're more likely to price match with a store that's not Lowe's. So when I went into the store, I did tell them that I had already spoken to the price match support, and that I was instructed to come into the store. No issue. So just, I recommend try again. If not, maybe the Walmart option, the Brickseek. But hey, just keep trying. If you can get them, stock up. But I'm going to go ahead and post all the links, prices, list of descriptions, And of course I'm going to go back through because I did a horrible job of reading any comments. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, do not hesitate to, you know, place them on here. I'll go back in and, you know, try to answer them. Again, I know this probably wasn't the most technical tutorial. It was my first one, but I definitely wanted to make sure, like I said, that I can answer some of the questions that I had, and that, you know, some of the members were so graciously nice enough to provide for me. So, you know, again, I am totally stoked to, you know, have found this group. You guys are amazing. I'm not sure that Brickseek, what they do with the lows, I don't think anyone price matches specifically with Brickseek. But I do know that it can help you kind of find the locations of who has what, because at least with Walmarts, I know that one Walmart 15 miles away, one will be $20-something and one will be $6. So it's just a matter of, I guess, whatever stores aren't selling them or having as great of a turnout for those items. So it's kind of luck of the draw, and then of course getting them to price match. But they, I guess it's the documents, but it's, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's tagged in this group, where if you go into the group and you search for receipts, there's a post that has tons of them. Like I said, I went in armed. I had like 10 or 15. So, you know, again, one person won't do it, the next might. Might be best to go later in the evening when it's not as busy and some of the employees are younger. You know, but you know, again, I hope this video was helpful, at least some, maybe answered some kind of questions for you guys. Let me know if there's anything else. And let's see. They might. I mean, they might price match with the Brickseek. I mean, it can't hurt to ask. You know, like I said, I'd be armed. Take a receipt from everywhere you can, including Lowe's, multiple, and I mean, you know, it's kind of hard to say no. But again, and maybe you can do the same thing I did, is reach out to the price match department and speak with them. When I went in, I told them I had spoke with that department and stated that I didn't have any links, but I did have receipts, and they instructed me to come into the store. So maybe, you know, that verbiage for some reason helped. But again, thank you ladies so much for being patient with me, and hopefully it may have answered even one question for you. And keep making those cups, and I'm sure you'll see me asking lots of questions to you guys. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful night. Bye guys.